What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the Magic Square Light of Peace with the Transform Element Op Leader. So these figures came out a couple years apart. Magic Square just came out in October 2022 and Op Leader came out in February of 2019. So about 3 years apart. Now, as I always mention with these reviews, I try to be objective as possible, but of course there's subjectivity involved when you're comparing stuff like this. So if I pick one and you prefer the other, then you win. I really try to do these comparisons to help people decide what direction they want to go with their collection. Today we're not going to be looking at MP44. I've looked at that one in the past, and right now all I have available to me is a KO, which seems unfair to compare a KO. So we're not going to include that in this comparison, but you can check out my Transform Element versus MP44 comparison that's already out there. I'll put a link right here. Without further ado, let's get started. We'll start off with accessories. All right, there are all the accessories they both come with. Pretty similar here, but let's go through them. They both come with a blaster, nicely sculpted. The Transform L1 does have a light up feature. There's a little button there, nice LED, but both come with that. They both come with an axe done similarly, although the mounting mechanism is different. They both come with hitches for the MP10 trailer. The MS-01 comes with an additional one for MP44, but obviously you have to pick the one, whichever trailer you want. And the TE-01 comes with an extra head here, so if you prefer the Season 1 or Season 2 head, you can kind of decide between the two. It's pretty well painted and nicely done, so I'm going to give accessories just by a hair to Transform Element. All right, next we'll talk about the gimmicks on these two, and they're both pretty light on gimmicks. The only one that the Magic Square really has is the opening doors in the vehicle mode, which the Transform Element doesn't have. But then the Transform Element does have the light up feature here on the gun, which I don't have the batteries in, or I'll have to put new batteries in. So I'm going to give them a tie. They both really don't have a lot of gimmicks, and they both have one that the other doesn't. So we'll give them a tie. Right now, let's talk about the cartoon accuracy. In order to put the G1 image here so you can take a look for yourself. And I actually had to take a second look because I forgot how darn good the Transform Element looked, especially compared to the cartoon here. And one of the reasons it really does nail that cartoon is the shape, the overall sculpt and shape of the arms and legs. They really squared off everything. The thighs especially are straight and squared. The legs are squared. The arms are squared. The backpack is squared. So really they just went for that kind of look. And in most places, I think it does well. Where they didn't do as well is the white here is not very white. It's almost a grayish white. The yellow still has the good contrast, but unfortunately this plastic is a little bit too dark. But I think the gray they used is also a little bit on the dark side. Coming to the Magic Square, they went for more of a rounded off look, so the thigh is a little bit more rounded. It is tapered here. The arms have rounded chamfered edges on the upper part and the lower part. The legs are chamfered. The hip area is also cut. It's not straight, right? The edges have these slight chamfers on them. So they did go for a more rounded look overall, and I think it does look good. So it's hard to say which one's more cartoon accurate because you don't really get that level of detail. Coming to the back though, that's where you see Magic Square really nailed it. They've got a much cleaner and closer backpack. This part really looks like the cartoon. Also, this hip skirt area here, this one with the blue in the middle versus this one which has just the silver across and then a little piece of blue down here. That doesn't look quite like the cartoon. So I'm going to give it to Magic Square just by a hair. I do think they nailed all the little elements here and there, and they have some places where they've rounded things off just for their own look. So I'll give it to Magic Square. All right, next we'll look at the sculpt on these two, and to be honest, they're both pretty darn clean. There isn't really any kibble or anything sticking out anywhere. I mean, they both clean up really, really nicely, especially compared to MP44. There's just no like pieces showing through. I would argue this is a little bit uncleanly here on the back of the knees and these tabs right here on the inner arms. But so minor. And then, you know, for the Transform Element, you've got these little pins right here showing through on the sides of the legs. And then you got this. So honestly, I think they're both pretty damn clean sculpts. So we'll give them a tie on the sculpt. All right, next we'll talk about the paint on these two figures, and surprisingly, both of them have very, very little paint. So let's point it out. So on the Magic Square, you've got the head crest here painted in gray, the eyes are painted in blue, the lights here are painted in orange, and then the yellow here on the crotch is painted, and then the gray here. That's it. That's all the paint. For the transform element, you do have the painted head crest, the painted blue eyes. This face is fully painted in gray. This one is not. That's actually just gray plastic. And because of that, this actually looks really good. I really like the fact that they painted that. You have the painted chest here. The red here is painted. The yellow here on the headlights. The gray here on the chest. The yellow here, I believe, are plastic pieces. No, that's paint as well. So the yellow on that. Coming down here, you have the silver on here, although this is chrome, so I guess that's considered painted as well. And then you got the silver paint on the bumper, which I believe the Magic Square has chrome, so those are kind of even. But because you got the extra paint on the face, as well as the chest here, we're going to give paint over to Transform Element just by a nose. All right, next we'll talk about the build quality on these two. And my copy here does have the broken smokestack. For me personally, that's enough to lose the point on build quality. The fact that they packaged it and shipped it and that broke, that's just, I can't ignore that, right? You got to take that into account when you're looking at a figure like this. That's not the only problem, but that's definitely enough for me to give build quality over Transform Element. But beyond that, there are some other issues. So in the vehicle mode, the doors, which are actually hidden away here inside the backpack, those doors actually flop open. Same as the rear view mirrors, those also flop open. And they're not really, they just don't feel good. They just feel like they're kind of loose. And the quality of the plastic, now it is nylon plastic, so it's not the typical plastic we use in injection molded plastic, but it seems to be held up so far. It just doesn't feel great. So just one example is you bend the knee here and it starts to come apart here. I would argue, and this is another thing, it's just construction is very simple and cheap. Now it doesn't break, other than this, it doesn't break, but it just feels like it's going to break. So for that reason, and for the reason of the broken smokestack, I'm going to give build quality over to Transform Element. All right, next let's talk about the articulation. In order to do that, we'll articulate each one individually so you can take a look. For the Magic Square, the head is on a ball joint, so you get up to there, down to there, side to side, and a rotation out of that. The arms can rotate all the way around on a ratchet. You have this shoulder joint inside the arm, and then you have this other shoulder joint, so you can really get it up pretty wild. You have a double jointed hinge here that lets you get the arm all the way across. Butterfly joint. A rotation at the bicep. You have a rotation at the elbow, double jointed elbow. It's a full bend, rotation at the wrist, individually articulated fingers at 1, 2 points, and then the thumb is on a ball joint and a pin for the middle. For the waist, you have a rotation all the way around. You have an ab crunch. You can get a kind of a crazy ab crunch if you open the second one there, so a really extreme ab crunch on that. And the rotation does go all the way around. For the legs, if you move this hip skirt out of the way, you can get the legs up to there. Move this one out of the way, you get it back to there. Out to the side. It is on a ratchet out to the side, by the way. You do have to put your finger in here and push that hip skirt back down, so just want to mention that. Rotation at the thigh, and a pretty wide rotation. Double jointed knee gets you the full bend. You do have to hold here, bringing it back down, and we already talked about that during build quality. Ankle tilt all the way out, ankle pivot, toe pivot, heel pivot. And that's it for the Magic Square. For the Transform Element, the head is on a rotating swivel, so it gets up to there, down to there, rotation, no side-to-side movement on that head. You get a rotation at the shoulder on a ratchet, out to there, no joint really to get it higher than that, so that's pretty much the limit. If you push in this button, you can release the shoulder, and then you get a little bit of a butterfly joint out of that. Continuing down, you have a rotation at the bicep, a single jointed elbow, so get you almost the full bend, not quite. Rotation at the wrist. You do have individually articulated fingers here at 1, 2 pin, but the bottom 3 fingers are pinned together, and then the thumb is on 2 pins there. They are a little weird. I'll be honest, these fingers have always been a little strange. Rotation of the waist, no ab crunch at all on this one. For the legs, you can go up to there on a ratchet, back to there, hindered by this piece here. So basically up to there. Out to the side on friction, not a ratchet. No rotation at the thigh, but you do have a rotation at the knee, which doesn't work as well. You have a single jointed knee that gets you up to there. Ankle tilt only to the outside, not to the inside. And then you have a toe bend up. So pretty obvious the Magic Square is going to win on articulation. They just have multiple points where they've improved the articulation. Now let's talk about the transformation and engineering. When it comes to transformation, I gotta give it to MS. They did a great job. I took this right out of the box, didn't look at the instructions or any videos, and transformed it to alt mode with no problems. It's pretty fun and easy. The transform element I took out of the box, had to look at the instructions, had to look at a video, and after several times of practicing, I still couldn't do it that smoothly on camera. At this point, I've transformed it so many times that I have it memorized, but it is not as fun or as intuitive. So I'm going to give that over to MS. When it comes to engineering, they both kind of pull off the same thing. Very clean robot mode and a very clean alt mode. Not a lot of kibble. Overall, pretty smooth panels, especially on the legs, compared to MP44. So I'm going to give them a tie on engineering. All right, and there you have both of them in their vehicle modes. And both pretty clean. I got to be honest, I know that this is Toon accurate, but I just don't think it looks good. I really like the way TE made the front of this truck. It just looks more like a truck. From the side, pretty even for both, although you do get the opening door here, but these rear view mirrors irritate me to no end. They do open, but they're so loose, and then the door itself is loose, and the whole thing just flops around. I hate that. So it's a nice gimmick feature, but I just don't like that it flops. Coming to the back here, I do think Transform Element is a little bit cleaner. You know, it doesn't have the hip skirts here. The white part's all blue, and it's pretty consistent. Now, if you put in the piece here for the hitch, they both have the trailer hitch. It does kind of clean it up a little bit more, but again, I prefer the look of the TE. But the only thing I like better on the Magic Square is these lights. I think that's a nice touch. But overall, I just think there's a cleaner look here for Transform Element. And then the doors and the rear view mirrors on this was just such a pain. So I'm going to give it to Transform Element. I think they did a better job at the vehicle mode here. All right, next we'll talk about the cost on these two. And going by the US retail, now I recently started putting images, so I'm going to do that here again. The Transform Element came in at $150 US retail. The Magic Square comes in at $170 US retail, so we're going to give cost over to Transform Element. All right, the final factor here is the Members' Choice category, where I ask my members which one they prefer, just based on personal preference and no other factors. You can see the score there, and Magic Square is going to take the Members' Choice category. So final thoughts on the comparison, you can see the score there, and I personally still prefer the Transform Element. But the main reason for that is the build, and the build is a big deal for me. Now, if build isn't a big deal for you, if you prioritize the cartoon look and the articulation, which this guy has, then I think you're really going to prefer the Magic Square. If you feel like you need a sturdy, heavy, you know, just premium feeling bot with a little bit more paint, not a lot, but a little bit, then I think the Transform Element's for you. So that's kind of how I feel about this one. Me personally, I still prefer Transform Element. They're still the reigning king to me. Hopefully you guys got a sense of which way you want to go for your collection. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.